Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Rausan Pereira, on Rajya Sabha television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events that have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. Emmerson Mnangagwa declared winner in disputed Zimbabwe poll. The new president wins first post-Mugabe election. Zanu-PF leader takes 50.8% of the vote. Opposition to challenge the election results. High temperatures ravage eastern parts of Asia. Record-breaking temperatures leave 29 dead in South Korea. Over 65 dead in Japan as a result of the heat. Prime Minister Modi speaks to Imran Khan after his party emerges as the largest party in the recently held elections. Hopes democracy will take deeper roots in Pakistan. PTI chief says India and Pakistan must devise joint strategy to free people from poverty. US seizes export controls for high-technology product sales to India, designates it as Strategic Trade Authorization 1 country, says designation acknowledges India-US security and economic relationship. And United Arab Emirates launches landmark 3-month visa amnesty program. Illegal foreign workers overstaying permits will be allowed to leave without penalties and get 6 months to find a job. Emmerson Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe's president and leader of the ruling Zanu-PF party, won the country's historic and hotly contested presidential election. Officials from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission announced early on Friday that Mnangagwa had received 2.46 million votes, or 50.8% of the 4.8 million votes cast. Nelson Chamisa, the candidate of the opposition Movement for Democratic Change party, won 2.14 million votes, or 44.3%, the ZEC said. Mnangagwa needed to win by more than 50% to avoid a runoff vote.
Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa, a former spy chief installed after Robert Mugabe's removal in a coup in November last year, was elected on Thursday after a poll marred by the deaths of 6 people in an army crackdown on opposition protests.
The votes received by Mnangagwa Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zanu-PF party are more than half the number of votes cast in the presidential election. Therefore, Mnangagwa Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zanu-PF party is therefore duly declared elected president of the Republic of Zimbabwe with effect from the 3rd of August 2018.
After 2 days of claims and counterclaims, 75-year-old Mnangagwa secured a comfortable victory, polling 2.46 million votes against 2.15 million votes for 40-year-old opposition leader Nelson Chamisa.
I pledge to be the president of all Zimbabweans, a president of those that voted for me and those who did not. To Nelson Chamisa, I want to say, you have a crucial role to play in Zimbabwe's present and in its future and in its unfolding future. I urge everyone to be calm and peaceful, and to look forward, to remember that we are all brothers and sisters, and that this land is all we have.
An MDC official briefly interrupted the announcement of results to say the party rejected the result as it had not been able to verify them.
We as MDC Alliance totally reject the results that have been announced so far. We reject the results because the results have not been verified by the chief election agents of the candidates.
On the streets of Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, opposition supporters said on Friday they were disappointed with the victory of Mnangagwa the morning after the country's election results were announced. Zimbabwe's newly elected president called for unity on Friday, but the main opposition leader questioned the outcome and demanded that proper and verified results be released.
We were expecting that this election would bring change because we are struggling, but as things turned out, it'll get worse.
Zimbabwe is not going anywhere with President Emmerson Mnangagwa. We are tired. We are sick and tired of Zanu-PF. For true, we are sick and tired.
The election, the first since the army's removal of 94-year-old Mugabe, passed off relatively smoothly, but its aftermath revealed the deep rifts in Zimbabwean society and the instinctive heavy-handedness of the security forces. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And joining me for a chat this week to talk about this is former Ambassador Virendra Gupta. Ambassador, thank you for joining me on the program. You know, what do you make of the election results in Zimbabwe?
Well, going by what the SADC and African Union has said, I would tend to believe that the election process was by and large peaceful and satisfactory. I mean, there were issues here and there. And I have personally seen during my stay in Southern Africa that SADC has emerged as a very strong watchdog for promotion of democracy in the region, and which is something which is not fully appreciated outside Africa. Most of us tend to be dismissive about democracy, and we feel that democracy is very alien to Africa, African ethos, and I think nothing could be farther from the truth. In my opinion, democracy, I mean, there are occasional issues in Zimbabwe itself. The whole point of Mugabe having dragged on, to cling on to power, which would seem undemocratic. But coming to these elections, I think by and large, election observer group from SADC and African Union have given a clean chit. I mean, they've said there were some procedural issues about election material not being available, some of the rolls, voter rolls, there were some issues. But, and there was, some sporadic incidents of violence, during the election. But I think they have categorically said that it was not on a scale which could, be taken as casting any doubt on the integrity of the election process. Now, on the other hand, you have some of the Western countries which have raised this an issue. Sometimes I'm a little dismayed by Western countries' double standards. They claim to promote and support democracy, and yet they have an agenda preconceived about sometimes regime change and sometimes change of the party. I mean, in this particular case, I believe some of the Western countries may have been very pleased to see Zanu-PF disappear from the scene. And, it was a very closely fought election.
It was a closely fought election.
60% for one party, 51% for the winning candidate, and 40% for Chamisa, which is very, good and keen contest. And I think that is really what the democracy should be all about.
And it's good for democracy at the end of the day when you have a close contest.
And I think Mnangagwa, he's also made a very conciliatory statement. I was very encouraged by his statement that he's not the president of only those Zimbabweans who voted for him, but for those also who've not voted. And he has actually offered a role. He visualizes a role for Chamisa. He's a young person who's replaced the former leader of the Movement of Democratic Change, and he's kind of reached out to him. So I'm very, very encouraged.
Talking about Chamisa, of course, he said that he's going to seek legal recourse really as far as the election results are concerned. Is he going to get anything there?
Well, that is for the courts to decide. I'm sure they will examine as and when he lodges the complaint, this will be examined in terms of the legal procedures, and they will pronounce the judgment. And in fact, the president-elect has not ruled it out. In fact, he himself suggested that that rather than demonstrating, I personally feel that once the election have taken place and the election commission, which is the primary body to supervise, if they have announced the results, then you must accept it.
Sure.
And the legal course which is open to you, you always challenge it.
Indeed.
But demonstrating against it, I think, is itself a very, very undemocratic act.
Right. So what does the election result mean for the region as a whole?
Well, the region has stood out in support of democracy. In fact, if you recall, in November last year, when Mugabe was somehow dragging on, and even though it was a soft coup, the region stood out in support, and primarily for the reason that Mugabe had dragged on for too long, and it seemed very undemocratic. But time and again I've seen that SADC and African Union have taken a position to support democracy. I must tell you that when I was in South Africa, I was also accredited to Lesotho, and there was an attempt by the army chief there to usurp political power from the democratically elected prime minister. He in fact told me during one of my visits, because we had an army training team in that country, and the SADC and the African Union came solidly in support of the elected prime minister. They did not let the military coup happen. They brought their entire weight to ensure that the military coup had to be reversed. So,
right.
I mean, this could not have taken place anywhere else.
Very quickly, Ambassador, before I let you go, what is the biggest challenge that the president-elect is facing now ahead of him? What does he need to do at the earliest?
Well, economic reconstruction, there's very high unemployment rate. He has said that Zimbabwe is open for business, but I think he'll have to implement it. The challenge is one of credibility. And the reason why, it's very clear from the reactions that have emerged, is that the Western countries have still not accepted him. Because he's very much seen not in terms of the change that he's proclaiming, but the continuity. Because he remained deputy of Mugabe. And Mugabe's image was so much sullied that the Western countries are still not sure as to which way to look at, how to look at him. So I think he had a short innings of about 7-8 months before this election, but the Western countries, the countries which would be able to play a very key role in the economic stabilization of Zimbabwe. I mean, there are other countries, mind you. I mean, India has some relationship. China is a very big player. China has too endorsed the elections.
Right.
So, but today, no country can, prosper in isolation. Zimbabwe, in my opinion, will need Western support, Western investment, Western capital, and the president-elect's biggest challenge would be to, bridge this credibility trust gap.
All right.
To ensure that the Western, the business community, the investors can come to Zimbabwe and create jobs in Zimbabwe. This is the biggest challenge. All right, Ambassador, we'll have to leave it to that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Thank you. On that note, then, we'll slip into a short break. Much more lined up on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In India, 95% of the vehicles are two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and cars with under 10 lakhs. 10 years, 12 years time, we'll probably have just electric vehicles. We learned that if you make a DC fan, the energy consumption will go down by a factor of 2.5. So we dreamt of what is called solar DC. If the best people with best training and best teachers, if they cannot figure out a way to take country forward in spite of all the obstacles, who else can?
Watch Eureka with Dr. Ashok Jhunjhunwala, Professor at IIT Madras, Saturday 4 p.m. and Sunday 12 noon, only on Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. South Korea sweltered under a heat wave with the record-breaking temperature in Seoul on Wednesday, leaving residents desperate for a cool way out. Sweltering heat also continued across Japan, sending temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius in many areas. The Met Agency said a high-pressure system and clear skies are the cause of the heat. Here's a detailed report.
Residents in Seoul were seen carrying fans and dipping their feet in streams to get some respite from the sun on Wednesday, while firefighters were spraying water to help cool down people's houses.
It's an extreme misery that I can't even walk without my fan in the daytime as the sunlight is too strong. Actually, I like summer, but this is first time ever that I'm suffering from the hot weather like this. I came to Shyeonggi stream with my girlfriend to dip our feet in water as I feel like I was about to melt in the hot sunlight. Though I couldn't even breathe on my way to here, it feels better and cooler than I can rest in the shade with the flowing water.
In northern Seoul, instruments on top of a building picked up temperature of 41.8 degrees Celsius, but the weather agency does not regard it as official since the location of the equipment is different from others. Meanwhile, in Hongcheong, about 100 km northeast of Seoul, the city logged the country's official highest ever temperature of 41 degrees Celsius, the weather agency added.
There's been a heat wave day after day. We spray water for people living in compact houses. Today we are housing every nook and corner as temperature is extremely high, like 39 degrees Celsius. After hosing water, we can lower the temperature by 5 degrees Celsius.
South Korea's meteorological agency said that the capital recorded the highest ever temperature of 39.6 degrees Celsius since they started keeping records in 1907. Adding that the heat will last for a while due to a higher atmospheric pressure around the country.
Seoul recorded highest temperature of 39.6 degrees Celsius since we started making meteorological observations in 1907. It's because of strong North Pacific high atmospheric pressure around South Korea, which is affecting the country. We forecast that the heat will last for a while as there won't be much change in the atmospheric pressure in the near future.
Meanwhile, tourists in Tokyo braved the summer heat to sightsee, despite a heat wave returning to engulf the capital and temperatures rising to record highs nationwide once again. According to Kyodo News Agency, 96 people in the central Tokyo died from heat stroke last month, a four-fold increase compared to last year, and tens of thousands had been sent to emergency rooms. Temperatures dropped lower last week after a typhoon brought cooler air over the nation. But on Wednesday, the mercury in Tokyo shot back up to over 35 degrees Celsius. Tourists from the US and Spain visiting the city's famous Sensoji temple in Akasuka said it felt hotter than back home, though tourists from South Korea said their capital, hit by a similar heat wave, felt worse.
Home is it's been raining a lot more, but it's pretty much cooler than Tokyo, and yeah, so there's a lot more heat here than at home.
More hot because the weather, the hot, it's more wet, and then you feel it's more uncomfortable because in Barcelona there is sea very near, and then it's easier to support it, but here it's really hard.
I arrived here on Sunday after the typhoon passed through, and next day I felt it's much cooler than South Korea. But after a few days it's got so hot here that I stayed indoors, although I came from Asakusa.
Inbound tourism in Japan has seen a massive increase over the past 5 years. Bolstered by visa requirement relaxations and fall in yen value, the country foresees another spike in visitors as it prepares to host the Tokyo 2020 Olympics during the height of summer, where race to combat heat has become a concern. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Another news now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to chairperson of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party, Imran Khan, who is set to become Pakistan's next Prime Minister. Prime Minister Modi congratulated Khan for his party emerging as the largest political party in the National Assembly of Pakistan in the recently conducted elections and hoped that democracy will take deeper roots in the neighboring country. He also reiterated his vision of peace and development in the entire neighborhood. Meanwhile, Khan had said that he will take oath as the Prime Minister on August 11th. Although his party has emerged as the single largest party in the National Assembly in the July 25th polls, winning 116 out of the 270 seats, it is still short of numbers to form the government independently. Meanwhile, India has become the third Asian country after Japan and South Korea to get the Strategic Trade Authorization 1 or STA1 status from after the US issued a federal notification to this effect. This will pave the way for high technology product sales to New Delhi, particularly in civil, space and defense sectors. India is the 37th country to be designated the STA1 status by the United States. The notification gains significance as the Trump administration made an exception for India, which is yet to become a member of the nuclear suppliers group. Traditionally, the US has placed only those countries in the STA1 list who are members of the 4 export control regimes: Missile Technology Control Regime, Wassenaar Arrangement, Australia Group and the NSG. The Trump administration notes that India is a member of the 3 of the 4 multilateral export regimes. And the UAE has launched a landmark 3-month visa amnesty program for visa violators and overstaying foreigners in the country. The amnesty program is expected to benefit hundreds of illegal foreign workers, including Indians overstaying their permits, by allowing them to leave the country without penalties. The overstaying residents will be able to exit the country without paying fines, or they can rectify their status by extending their visa during the amnesty period, which runs from the 1st of August to the 31st of October. The UAE is home to 2.8 million Indian expatriates, the largest expatriate community in the country. The UAE government did not release specific numbers but says thousands of people, primarily laborers from countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal and the Philippines will benefit from the amnesty scheme, which will facilitate their smooth return to their home countries. The UAE previously granted 2 of such visa amnesties in 2007 and 2013, benefiting some 340,000 foreigners. Well, here's a roundup of some more international news in our segment Globe Watch. Well, according to a UN report, North Korea has not stopped its nuclear and missile programs and continues to violate UN sanctions. The 6-month report by independent experts monitoring the implementation of UN sanctions was submitted to the Security Council of North Korea Sanctions Committee on the 3rd of July. Pyongyang also violated a textile ban by exporting more than $100 million in goods between October 2017 and March 2018 to China, Ghana, India, Mexico, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Turkey and Uruguay. Well, leading non-governmental organizations SOS Mediterranean and Doctors Without Borders have announced that their migrant rescue ship Aquarius would resume patrolling the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Libya. In June, the Aquarius picked up 629 migrants, including scores of children, off the coast of Libya and took them to Syria. More than 10,000 migrants have drowned in the region since 2014, according to the International Organization for Migration. The Syrian army and its allies has taken full control of the Yarmouk basin in southwestern Syria after routing Islamic State militants. Between 1,000 and 1,500 Islamic State insurgents who had been holding their ground in the area yielded under intensive Russian bombing from the air. Well, let's shift focus now and bring you up to speed with some news from the world of sports in our segment Sports Action. Spanish football club Barcelona has confirmed the signing of Chile midfielder Arturo Vidal in a deal of about 20 million euros. Vidal, who was earlier associated with German club Bayern Munich, signed a 3-year contract with Barcelona and is now set to join the club following a medical test. The Chilean footballer became Barcelona's 4th major signing after they roped in Brazilian strikers Malcolm and Arthur Melo, along with French footballer Clement Langlais. UEFA extended former Manchester City's midfielder Samir Nasri's doping ban to 18 months following an appeal against the original 6-month sanction. Nasri was handed the original suspension in February after UEFA found him guilty of using a prohibited method in accordance with the World Anti-Doping Agency's prohibited list. Nasri's lawyer said that he was sanctioned for receiving an intravenous drip treatment at a clinic in Los Angeles in 2016 when he was on loan at Sevilla from City. Former world number 1 Andy Murray withdrew from the quarterfinals of the ongoing City Open, citing exhaustion as the reason behind the decision. Murray said that he needs to look after his body carefully. Murray, who went through a hip surgery in January this year, was appearing in his 3rd tournament since the operation and has been trying hard to get back to his form following prolonged injury. British javelin thrower Joanna Blair was banned for 4 years after testing positive for anabolic steroids. Blair, who has won the British title in 2016, said she had unintentionally ingested them from a contaminated supplement bought online. She has been banned until July 2021 by UK anti-doping agency. Blair was given an out-of-competition test while representing Great Britain in the European Athletics Team Championships in France in June 2017. She was tested on June 24th last year and handed a provisional suspension by UKAD the following month. And finally, well, in the mountains of central Vietnam, a colossal pair of hands lifted a golden thread of walkway high above the cliff tops, as if the mountain itself had sprouted limbs. Khao Vang, or the Golden Bridge in Vietnam's Ba Na Hills, has attracted scores of tourists since it opened in June, eager to see a novel piece of architecture famed for its unusual design. I'm going to leave you with a glimpse of this engineering marvel. Until next time, this is Rausan Pereira signing off.